My friends, if you listen carefully to the quiet movements within your own soul, you will begin to notice that attraction is never random. It is not a spark that appears by accident between two separate bodies moving through the world. Attraction is a conversation, a dialogue between two unconscious worlds, two ancient emotional histories, two shadows recognizing something familiar in one another and trying once again to finish a story that was never completed. And when we speak of the empath, we are speaking of someone who has lived much of their life without psychic skin. Exposed, open, highly sensitive to emotional currents most people never even notice. The empath is not simply kind, not merely intuitive. They are someone whose nervous system was shaped by necessity. Their sensitivity was not chosen, it was trained, forged in an environment where awareness meant survival. The gift the world romanticizes was born in psychological fire, not peace. And the very wound that shaped the empath's sensitivity is often the same wound that shapes their relationships. Because the empath does not fall in love the way others do. They fall into resonance. They are drawn not to people but to unresolved patterns. What they call intuition is often memory. What they call chemistry is often repetition. And what they call destiny is very often the unconscious attempting to repair something that broke long ago. This is why the empath finds themselves magnetized again and again toward the narcissist. Not because the narcissist is strong, not because they are superior, but because the narcissist embodies the emotional climate the empath once had to navigate in order to survive. The ego may argue against this, it may protest, it may insist, this time is different. But the unconscious does not lie. It repeats until it is understood. Imagine a child growing up in a home where emotional instability is the weather of daily life. One parent emotionally withdrawn, the other unpredictable. Love is inconsistent, safety is uncertain. The child learns very early to read the room, to sense shifts in mood before they are spoken, to detect danger in silence, tone, micro-expressions, the sudden withdrawal of warmth. Their nervous system becomes finely tuned, hyper-aware, always scanning, always anticipating. They learn to soothe others before soothing themselves. They learn to fix what is not theirs to fix. They learn that affection must be earned through emotional labor. And slowly, without anyone ever saying it out loud, a belief takes root deep in the psyche. Love is conditional, and my worth depends on how much I can give. This belief crystallizes into what we might call the core wound, an archetypal fracture where the child's innate sense of worth dissolves into self-sacrifice, where being becomes replaced by doing, where love becomes something to perform rather than something to receive, and the unconscious psyche, relentless in its intelligence, will continue to bring people into this person's life who mirror that original wound. The narcissist, with their charm, their intensity, their emotional hunger, their alternating warmth and coldness, becomes the most accurate external reflection of the empath's internal world. But neither sees this at the beginning. They do not recognize each other with the intellect. They recognize each other with a wound. The empath senses the narcissist's hidden suffering and feels compelled to heal it. The narcissist senses the empath's depth and compassion and feels entitled to consume it. These are not conscious choices. They are compulsions. They arise from the deepest layers of the psyche where instinct, memory, and archetype intertwine. This is why the pattern feels fated, inevitable, magnetic. And this is also why it cannot be broken through willpower, positivity, or being more loving. Because the wound is not healed by ascending away from it. It is healed by turning toward it. The empath often believes their task is to bring more light outward, to love harder, to understand deeper, to forgive endlessly. But the wound does not heal through outward illumination. It heals through inner confrontation. When the empath finally turns inward, when they dare to examine the wound they have spent a lifetime avoiding, something profound begins to shift. They begin to see that their sensitivity was not only a gift, but also a shield. That their compassion often masked a terror of abandonment. That their endless giving was not always pure, but rooted in a desperate need to be chosen, valued, and seen. And in this realization, the empath comes face to face with the oldest ghost in their psyche. The child who believed they were not enough unless they performed emotionally for others. Healing this wound requires something the empath is rarely taught to practice. Not self-sacrifice, not self-analysis, but self-confrontation. Standing face to face with the parts of themselves they exiled into the shadow long ago. The part that is exhausted from overgiving. The part that resents being needed. The part that longs to be held instead of holding. The part that feels anger. The part that feels deprivation. The part that whispers quietly in dreams. I want to be loved without effort. This is where the real work begins. And so the empath begins the descent, not a descent into darkness, but into forgotten truth. The shadow, as I have said before, is not evil. It is simply the part of the self that has gone unlived. For the empath, the unlived self is often the one who chooses, the one who sets boundaries, the one who says no without guilt, the one who demands reciprocity, the one who does not apologize for taking up space. Rediscovering this inner figure is the beginning of liberation. Imagine a dream. An empath stands alone in a forest at night, holding a lantern. The trees around them resemble figures from their past. Shapes of people who drained them, manipulated them, needed them, seduced them. Each tree feels alive, threatening, familiar. The empath believes these figures are real. But as the lantern grows brighter, something astonishing happens. The shapes do not move. They do not breathe. They are not people at all. They are projections, formed from memory, shaped by fear, sustained by longing. Only one figure in the forest is alive, the empath themselves. This is the dream of individuation. The moment the psyche reveals that the empath has been wandering through their own inner landscape, mistaking the ghosts of childhood for the partners of adulthood. As the empath begins to reclaim themselves, the unconscious begins to rewrite the script of attraction. What once felt irresistible begins to feel dangerous. What once felt magnetic begins to feel familiar. What once felt like destiny begins to feel like déjà vu. From the outside, this shift appears sudden. Friends notice the empath acting differently, choosing differently, responding differently. But internally, this instant is the culmination of years, sometimes decades of unconscious tension finally resolving. This is where attraction flips. When the empath heals the core wound, the narcissist loses their power, not through anger, not through rejection, but through irrelevance. The empath is no longer seduced by emotional intensity. They no longer confuse chaos with passion. They no longer collapse into self-abandonment in the face of coldness. And most importantly, they no longer mistake emotional labor for love. The archetypal dance breaks because one dancer steps out of the choreography. What causes this rupture? It is the moment the empath realizes the narcissist was never a soulmate. They were a symbol of the psyche's attempt to replay the original wound in hopes of transforming it. And once the inner child is seen, acknowledged, and comforted, the psyche no longer needs an external battlefield to fight an old war. The narcissist fades from significance not because they are defeated, but because the lesson is complete. The empath's energy changes, their posture changes, their breath deepens, their eyes soften. Their intuition no longer scans for danger, it begins to sense truth. And this shift is felt not only within, but without. The narcissist often reacts with confusion, irritation, or sudden withdrawal. Not because the empath changed behavior, but because the empath stopped feeding the illusion. And this reaction only confirms what the empath now knows. There is nothing here to fix. At this point, something new begins to emerge. The empath starts attracting differently. Not people who need saving, not people who demand emotional labor, but people who speak the language of reciprocity. Individuals whose emotional capacity matches their own, who offer presence instead of hunger, who give without taking. At first, this feels unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, because the empath has spent so long equating difficulty with depth. But slowly, the psyche learns a new truth. Peace is not boring, mutuality is not weak, and love does not require suffering to feel real. This is only the beginning, and in the next part, we will explore what happens inside the unconscious when this shift completes, and why the empath's entire inner world begins to reorganize itself around sovereignty rather than survival. My friends, you must understand that every true transformation in the psyche begins long before the ego can name it. Long before you can say, "I'm healing," something deeper has already started to move. Healing does not begin as a decision. It begins as a tremor beneath consciousness, a subtle rearranging of inner forces like tectonic plates shifting under the surface of the sea. The empath often believes healing arrives as one lightning strike. A sudden insight, a moment of clarity that shatters the old spell. And yes, sometimes it does break through that way. But the unconscious most of the time works differently. It does not shout, it stirs. It sends symbols through dreams. It places synchronicities in your daily life. It brings emotional echoes that rise and fall like tides. And as the empath approaches the healing of the core wound, the psyche begins to signal this shift in ways the rational mind cannot fully grasp. One dream I have heard again and again from empaths is the dream of a collapsing bridge. They stand at one end of a bridge looking toward the other side, and there, waiting, stands a familiar figure. Someone they desired, someone they chased, someone who embodied both longing and fear. The empath begins to walk toward them step by step, but with each step the bridge cracks beneath their feet. The wood splinters, the ropes strain, the structure that once carried them begins to fail. Eventually the bridge gives way entirely, and the empath feels the shock of falling. But here is what is strange. In the dream, they never actually fall. Time suspends itself. The air thickens. A calm settles in the chest, an eerie calm like silence after an explosion. And when the empath turns around, they notice something that was not visible before, a new path. Behind them, one that had always been there but hidden by their fixation on the old bridge. This dream is the unconscious speaking in pure symbol. The collapsing bridge is the psyche withdrawing support for the old bond. The bridge was never love. It was a psychic structure, built from the core wound, reinforced by trauma, maintained by hope. And now the unconscious is saying, you have finished with this lesson. The falling is the ego's fear, the terror of losing identity. Because for many empaths, the pattern is not just a relationship, it is a self-definition. The rescuer, the one who understands, the one who stays, the one who can endure. So when the bridge collapses, it feels like the self is collapsing. But the calm that arrives afterward is something else. It is the true self emerging, the inner authority the empath never knew they possessed. And the new path represents the life that can finally unfold when the wound begins to loosen its grip. Now, the empath often misunderstands what happens next, because the first sign of healing is not always joy. Sometimes it looks like emotional numbness. The heart goes quiet. The empath feels less urgency, less longing, less obsession. And they interpret this as detachment, failure, or regression. They think, I'm losing my sensitivity, or I'm becoming cold. But in truth, what they are experiencing is the nervous system recalibrating. For the first time, the empath is not reacting from survival. They are not scanning, not contorting, not absorbing. They are simply existing. And existence without emotional labor feels foreign to someone who has lived in emotional effort their entire life. It is the silence after a storm, unnerving precisely because it is peaceful. And here is something important. The narcissist senses this shift long before the empath names it. Those who are accustomed to feeding on emotional intensity recognize immediately when the empath's energy withdraws. Even if the empath continues to speak politely, even if they remain kind, even if they do not confront, something deeper has changed. The inner child is no longer running the show. The narcissist feels this as a loss of gravity. as if an invisible rope that once pulled the empath into orbit has suddenly gone slack. And this is why narcissists often react in predictable ways. Confusion, seduction, rage, indifference, sudden attempts at reattachment. They may suddenly become romantic. They may suddenly apologize. They may suddenly promise change. Or they may vanish coldly, hoping the empath will panic and chase. But you must see the truth beneath the behavior. They do not miss the empath. They miss the supply. They miss the emotional resonance that validated their grandiosity and covered their fragility. Yet the healed empath begins to respond differently. What once triggered empathy now triggers awareness. What once pulled out compassion now pulls out clarity. And clarity is the end of the illusion. So what does the healed empath actually look like? Not the fantasy version, not the spiritual ideal, but the real psychological reality. They speak less, but their words carry weight. They feel deeply, but they no longer drown in other people's emotions. They sense suffering, but they do not automatically take responsibility for fixing it. They remain kind, but their kindness is no longer an open door for exploitation. They become soft, but not fragile, firm, but not rigid, open, but not porous. This balance is not achieved through discipline alone. It comes through integration. The inner child, the survivor, the shadow, the caregiver, the intuitive, all these parts begin to communicate. The psyche becomes a council rather than a battlefield. And when that happens, attraction changes at the root. Before healing, the empath is drawn to intensity because it resembles emotional truth. After healing, the empath is drawn to authenticity because it resembles emotional safety. Before healing, the empath gravitates toward wounded individuals because they mirror the empath's internalized responsibility to repair what is broken. After healing, the empath gravitates toward emotionally mature individuals because they mirror the empath's rediscovered self-worth. Before healing, the empath chooses with memory. After healing, they choose with vision. And this flip is so deep that it changes not only who the empath loves, but what the empath notices. Their attention shifts away from dramatic personalities and towards subtle presence. They begin to find quiet strength more attractive than overt charm. Consistency more attractive than fireworks, warmth more attractive than intensity. They begin to value someone who does not need them, but chooses them. And as this shift becomes stable, something remarkable happens in the body. The nervous system stops bracing for impact. Shoulders drop. The jaw softens. Breath expands. The body begins to trust the present moment. For the first time, safety is found not in pleasing others, but in protecting oneself. This is where the archetype of the wounded healer begins to dissolve, and in its place rises something new. The sovereign healer. The sovereign healer is not someone who heals everyone. They are someone who refuses to abandon themselves in the process. They understand that energy is not infinite, that empathy is not a currency, that love is not salvation. They stop trying to rescue others from their darkness and instead illuminate their own inner world so completely that no narcissistic shadow can consume them again. And in this transformation, the empath begins to dream differently. They dream of open fields instead of confined rooms. They dream of walking instead of searching. They dream of clear voices instead of riddles. They dream of a home. A home is one of the most powerful symbols of healing because it represents an integrated self. A psyche that has become safe to live inside. The unconscious communicates healing not through logic but through image. And every dream is a message. You are becoming whole. But perhaps the most fascinating part of all is what happens externally. The healed empath becomes, in a sense, invisible to narcissists. Not literally invisible, but psychologically incompatible. The patterns no longer fit. The frequency no longer matches. Narcissists can approach, but the empath does not resonate. They do not offer the emotional cues that narcissists rely on. The subtle dance of giving, absorbing, softening, rescuing. And without that resonance, the narcissist moves on instinctively, searching for a more compatible unconscious field. Meanwhile, emotionally healthy individuals begin to feel drawn to the empath's presence. They sense steadiness. They sense inner clarity. They sense quiet strength. They sense someone who listens not to fix, but to understand. Someone who feels without absorbing. Someone who gives without disappearing. This new attraction is not based on need. It is based on recognition. The recognition of two sovereign selves meeting in authenticity. And the empath often marvels at how effortless it feels. They realize healing was never about fighting the narcissist or resisting the pattern through force. It was about dissolving the wound that made the pattern necessary. Because when the wound dissolves, the psychic magnet reverses polarity. The empath no longer seeks intensity because they are no longer confusing intensity with love. They no longer seek brokenness because they are no longer confusing repair with purpose. They no longer seek chaos because they are no longer confusing chaos with depth. They no longer seek the narcissist because they are no longer confusing abandonment with destiny. This is the meaning of attraction flipping, not punishment, not reward. Alignment. When the inner world changes, the outer world must follow. The universe does not withhold healthy love. The unconscious simply cannot recognize it until the wound is integrated. And so healing is not becoming someone new. It is remembering who you were before pain tried to rewrite your story. And when the empath returns to the original self, attraction becomes not a trap, but an expression of freedom. In the next part, we will enter the final stage. The moment when the past loosens its grip completely. When projection collapses. When the empath stops reenacting and begins to choose with clarity, with integrity, and with the calm wisdom of the integrated self. There comes a moment in the empath's journey when the past finally loosens its grip. Not because it has been erased, not because it has been forgotten, but because it has been fully understood. And this understanding does not arrive as a thought. It arrives as a bodily knowing, a somatic recognition, an archetypal settling inside the psyche. It comes quietly, like dawn breaking over the inner landscape. At first, only a faint glow touches the edges of awareness. Then a softening, a subtle warmth, a shift in the inner air. And suddenly, without effort, without resistance, the empath notices something astonishing. They are no longer pulled toward what once magnetized them. The attraction is gone. Not suppressed, not fought, not resisted. Simply gone. The empath may encounter the narcissist again. They may see the same charm, the same confidence, the same intensity masking emptiness. But instead of feeling compelled to understand, rescue, or explain, the empath feels distance. Not coldness, not bitterness, but clarity. A clarity that says, this is not mine, this is not me, this is not my responsibility. And this clarity arrives without anger. Because anger belongs to the stage of awakening. Clarity belongs to the stage of integration. You must understand that projection is inevitable in early psychological development. We do not see others as they are. We see them as carriers of our unfinished inner material. The empath projected their longing and their wound onto the narcissist. The narcissist projected their need for validation and superiority onto the empath. This mutual projection felt like intimacy, but it was not intimacy. It was the unconscious seeking its own reflection. When the empath withdraws their projection, when they take back their longing, their fear, their childhood ache, the entire structure collapses. The narcissist no longer sees admiration in the empath's eyes, and the empath no longer sees promise in the narcissist's emptiness. This collapse is what I call the psychic inversion. The direction of energy reverses. For many empaths, this inversion does not arrive dramatically. It shows up in small moments. A delayed response to a message, a lack of emotional urgency, an absence of guilt when setting a boundary, a calm no where panic once lived. But beneath these subtle behaviors lies a monumental shift. The empath's self-worth is migrating from external validation to internal stability. The core wound, once a vast psychological cavity, has begun to close. Healing does not erase the wound. It integrates it. The empath can now remember without reenacting, feel without reliving, understand without repeating. They see why they once tolerated disrespect, why they mistook intensity for meaning, why they accepted crumbs while offering sustenance. And this understanding releases them from the compulsion to repeat the pattern. Imagine a river that once surged violently. carving deep scars into the land. Over time, the water calms. It still flows, but now with grace instead of desperation. The banks stabilize. The earth no longer erodes. This is the healed empath. The same depth, but no longer compulsive. The same sensitivity, but no longer self-destructive. The same capacity for love, but no longer self-negating. And in this new state, the empath begins to experience something they were long denied. Reciprocity. Not the illusion of it, not the promise of it, but the lived reality. Someone speaks to them gently and they do not shrink. Someone offers affection and they do not question their worth. Someone sets a boundary and they do not feel abandoned. Someone shows consistency and they do not feel bored. This is revolutionary because the empath's nervous system is finally learning what healthy love feels like. Not chaotic, not conditional, not painful, not performative. But before this new pattern fully stabilizes, there is often an intermediate phase, a psychic shedding. Old emotions surface unexpectedly. Grief, anger, loneliness, relief. The empath may mourn not only the narcissist, but the version of themselves who endured so much. They grieve years of overgiving, childhood moments swallowed in silence, love poured into places where it could never take root. This grief is sacred. It is the soul recognizing its own resurrection. During this phase, many empaths dream of water, floods, rain, ocean waves rising and falling. Water is the symbol of the unconscious. These dreams signal emotional cleansing, the release of psychic residue stored for decades. Sometimes the water is murky. Sometimes it clears. Sometimes the dreamer sinks. Sometimes they float effortlessly. The psyche is recalibrating. Then new symbols appear. Doors, gates, thresholds, bridges rebuilt. A door opening gently means readiness for a new narrative. A locked door signals remaining resistance. A guarded gate represents discernment. A rebuilt bridge symbolizes reconciliation between conscious and unconscious. But perhaps the most powerful symbol of all is the appearance of the child. Not wounded, not crying, but curious. This child often leads the dreamer into open spaces. Gardens, fields of light, places of innocence and wonder. This is not the past self. It is the emerging self, the one no longer defined by the core wound. When this child appears, healing is no longer theoretical. It is embodied. In waking life, this manifests as inner spaciousness. The empath feels lighter, less entangled, less obligated. They move through the world with quiet confidence, not the performative confidence of the narcissist, but the grounded confidence of someone who knows who they are. They stop apologizing for existing. They stop shrinking around strong personalities. They stop explaining their worth. They occupy their life fully, and this changes attraction profoundly. Those who once overlooked them begin to notice. Those who underestimated them feel unsettled. Those who tried to use them find no entry point. Meanwhile, those who resonate with authenticity feel drawn effortlessly. This is not mysticism. It is psychology. Humans respond to energy more than behavior. Wounds emit one frequency, healing emits another. Narcissists sense boundarylessness instinctively. They also sense when someone is no longer available for psychic feeding. The healed empath becomes energetically incompatible with manipulation. And then something extraordinary happens. The empath becomes bored by the narcissist. This boredom is the final stage of liberation. What once felt profound now feels shallow. What once felt intense now feels exhausting. What once felt fated now feels repetitive. Boredom is not indifference. It is recognition. Recognition of the pattern, recognition of the illusion, recognition of the self. At this stage, a new inner archetype emerges. The inner sage, calm, discerning, unimpressed by masks. The inner sage guides the empath toward relationships that reflect growth rather than wounds. These connections feel different. There is no rush, no panic, no compulsion. There is space, curiosity, resonance. It feels less like fate and more like alignment. And alignment is the natural state of a healed psyche. The empath now understands something profound. They were never drawn to the narcissist because of love. They were drawn because of the wound. And now that the wound is healing, love itself becomes possible. Real love, not trauma-bonded devotion, not self-erasing attachment, not emotional acrobatics. Love that reveals the self rather than consuming it. Near the end of every deep transformation, the psyche turns inward one final time, not to reopen the wound, but to bless it. The empath realizes the wound was not a curse. It was an initiation. Every wound carries a message, and for the empath, the message is this: you learn to listen to the world before you learn to listen to yourself. Now the reversal is complete. The empath no longer scans outward for safety. They attune inward. What once scattered their soul into 1,000 sensitivities gathers into one coherent presence. As they become whole. In this wholeness, the empath becomes a sanctuary rather than a sacrifice. A place where connection can occur without self-abandonment. A presence that offers warmth without depletion. The narcissist cannot enter this sanctuary, not because they are rejected, but because the frequency no longer matches their hunger. Attraction, after all, is the language of the unconscious. And when the empath heals the core wound, the unconscious changes its language. It stops calling for the same lesson, stops summoning the same pattern. Instead, it invites reciprocity, respect, emotional courage. The irony is that these healthier connections may have always been nearby. But the wound made them invisible. The psyche overlooks what does not match its unfinished business. Now the empath sees clearly. They see steadiness, they see respect, they see quiet care. And in these connections, something remarkable happens. They remain themselves. This is the true sign of healing. The ability to stay whole in the presence of another. The shadow may still whisper, "Are you safe? Are you worthy?" But the healed empath does not silence it. They listen, they acknowledge its history, and gently they say, "You no longer need to protect me." This is integration. The child, the protector, the rescuer, the intuitive, the wound, all existing without fighting for control. The empath becomes a unified field. Imagine one final dream, an ancient temple, walls carved with faces, memories, symbols of the past. In the center, a pool of still water. The empath looks in and sees the child they once were on the other side. The child smiles, not to please, but to recognize. The reflection shifts. The child grows, ages, becomes the present self, and then the two images merge into one. This is individuation. The unconscious withdraws its projections. The reenactments end. The self emerges whole. With this wholeness, attraction becomes intentional rather than compulsive. Chemistry becomes discernment. Emotional depth becomes a gift rather than a burden. Love becomes a meeting of equals. And the empath finally understands. Attraction did not flip because the world changed. It flipped because the self did. This is the end of the old story, and the beginning of the empath's true life.